All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Tim. I am the Electoral Committee co-chair, and I use he, him pronouns. Welcome to the first of two Q&A sessions that we are doing for candidates seeking Twin Cities DSA endorsement for this final round of consideration in 2022. Today, we're joined by Aaron Wagner, who is seeking the endorsement for the City Council race in Robbinsdale Ward 4. These Q&As are an opportunity for members to ask questions to candidates who are seeking our endorsement and to consider their answers before the endorsement meeting and the vote. So this is an opportunity for folks to ask questions that will help you make a decision about whether the chapter should make an endorsement in this race. For the format that we're going to be using today, I'm going to hand it over to Aaron in a sec to make a quick introduction, and then we're going to move into some pre-submitted member questions that we have. Once we've gone through the pre-submitted questions, we are going to open it up to folks who are on the call. You'll have the opportunity to get off mute and ask a question directly to Aaron. Or if you would prefer, you can also send me a private DM and I can read it out to them instead. Then a little bit of housekeeping for next steps for members. We have one more candidate Q&A that is this Thursday, September 22nd at 1 p.m. with Samantha Sensormura, who's running for Minnesota State House District 63A. Then after all the Q&As are over, our endorsement meeting will be held on Saturday, September 24th at 1 p.m., where members will consider endorsements. All members are invited to that meeting, and we hope that members will be engaged and participate in the discussion there, as well as in other places, including the chapter Slack channels. Then after the meeting, the endorsement ballot will be conducted by OPA vote. It'll be emailed out to members in good standing, who will have 5 days to respond with which, if any, of the candidates that we're considering you feel the chapter should endorse. I think that's everything as far as the administrative stuff, so I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to make a quick introduction.
Hey everyone, my name is Aaron Wagner, and I'm, like Tim had said, first off, thanks for the time and the opportunity to talk with Twin Cities DSA. I've been a member since 2020. I've been a socialist, democratic socialist, or whatever, label, I think you want to use. I've, all my adult life, I've been sympathetic to those politics, very labor oriented in my politics. It's kind of the big reason that I decided to run, is that I really think that the Robbinsdale City Council could benefit from a working class, progressive, or socialistic perspective there. So that kind of is one of the big reasons I decided to run. The other reason is, I think stemming from that, the policies that I think can really help empower working people, because if that's the kind of the goal of the electoral strategy, right, is to use that power to kind of grow and empower workers. And so things like the Blue Line extension, a citywide $15 minimum wage, a sick and safe time ordinance, fighting wage theft, having prevailing wage in the city, things that organized labor want municipalities to fight for and to, and so I want to do those things in the council. And I think, and so the DSA, I think our politics align with that vision, and I certainly want to represent Twin Cities DSA in my community, at a minimum, and then to a greater extent, hopefully on the city council. So I really appreciate the opportunity again to do this. And so I've lived in Robbinsdale for about 5 years, and kind of going through the DFL conventions this cycle. I hadn't done them before, try to get more active, and again bring a perspective that's, I think, more aligned with working class needs into the party in whatever small way I could. And then doing that, I kind of got in touch with some progressive folks in my neighborhood, in my community, who encouraged me to explore this run. So that's kind of what led me to this point. Kind of the motivation or push was from those members. And I guess the other thing too is I've been endorsed by Stonewall DFL, my Senate District DFL, as well as Mike Freiberg and Ann Rest, and a couple school board members, as well as a handful of labor unions too. LIUNA, the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, the Carpenters Union, and my own union, MAPE. So again, I'm trying to orient this campaign in the community and around labor politics, because like I mentioned at the beginning, I really think we need that kind of voice in our city. So I'm happy to answer any questions about anything. I'm an open book. I really, ever since I decided to run, like I think Tim and maybe some other folks know, that I reached out kind of, shortly after filing to run for office to seek the Twin Cities DSA endorsement, because as a member, as a Democratic Socialist, it's just very important to me that that I get this endorsement, or at least just have the support of the organization or of the members as a whole. So because again, I know that we need leadership in spaces that we can find it, and that's what everyone in DSA is Democratic Socialist leaders. So thanks for the time, but yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. That kind of goes to the first question that we had, and you already mentioned that you are a member of Twin Cities DSA. The question that was submitted was also wondering when you joined. I think you said 2020, and sort of what prompted you to join. So what prompted you to join DSA?
Yeah, so 2020 is when I joined. I think there was a little hiccup in my dues. Like I had them on like auto pay, and I don't know. But anyway, that got squared up last year. So I don't know if there's like a gap or something in my membership history, but just in case that is, I don't know, comes up. But I joined in 2020, and then I did that because I'm trying to remember if there was a certain thing that really kind of drove me to join. I had known of DSA since the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016. I was a member of Socialist Alternative at the time, and they internally were still trying to work out their orientation to DSA. So I kind of, didn't really engage with them during that time. I left that organization in 2018, kind of had a little break, I guess, with politics for the next couple of years. I think the presidential election cycle got me thinking about it again in a big way. Like I'm always thinking about politics and power and all of those things, but just from a standpoint of like really getting convinced at that time of the electoral strategy again, which I alluded to in my introduction. And because I think it's fair to be skeptical of it, but I think DSA has shown that they have a viable winning strategy in that regard. And seeing what the Sanders campaign did to grow the membership, and other federal races and local races, and just seeing working class power grow thanks to the help of DSA. And I knew that I couldn't not support it. Like I've always, I think I've been a subscriber to like Jacobin longer than I've been a DSA member. So it's like I've always been kind of on the philosophical, same philosophical team or side, but just never really took that next step. And so I tried to become more active in 2020. And I apologize for the long-winded answer, but it's not really a straightforward thing. It's something that I've kind of grown into or grown towards when it comes to my politics.
Thank you. So next one that got submitted is about your campaigning, and it is, how do you plan to reach out to working class people during the political process, particularly when people are working more and may not have access to be able to fully participate?
It's an awesome question. This maybe it'll indirectly answer the question, but like I have focused on, and the volunteers that have helped out the campaign have focused on door knocking. because I think Robbinsdale is, without seeing like hard numbers, I think it is majority working class. And like the question said, it's difficult to be politically active as a working person because of the system that we find ourselves in, and because of how much energy, daily life takes out of the average working person when it comes to their job and family and all of those other things. And so instead of kind of passively being a candidate or a campaign that is waiting for things to happen to it, again, recognizing what kind of area I live in, it's important to me to go out and be proactive and reach out to community members and reach out to working families in the ward by knocking on their door and having conversations and giving them my contact information if they need anything and going from there. So it's been pretty well received for the most part. I think a lot of families in the neighborhood and a lot of working people are excited about it. Maybe not even, to be honest, a lot of it might not even have to do with the policies. A lot of it, I think, has to do with just being, just going to the door and having a conversation face to face. I think that means a lot to folks, especially since that hasn't really existed in the ward in a long time. So most people don't know who's on, it's their city councilor. Most people weren't even aware there's an election going on or what even the issues are. And like I've talked to a number of people that have lived in the ward 20 years and have never had a candidate, much less a city council candidate, talk to them. So that has been, I guess it's, it was disappointing to hear that, but at the same time, it's like heartwarming that they've been receptive and open to my candidacy. And again, I think trying to talk to everybody and knock on every door, which we pretty much did for the primary, and going to do the same thing for the general, which we're well on our way to do, is probably the most important tactic that we've used.
All right. Next question that we have is, again, talking about your campaign, and this is a merger of two questions that got submitted that were getting along the same lines. And the question is, would you publicly identify with Twin Cities DSA during your campaign? And would you commit to publicly displaying that on either your website or social media?
Yeah, 100%. So like when I was reaching out to organizations for endorsements, DSA was one of the first I reached out to. And since I didn't decide to file until like the week of the filing deadline, it was already kind of past the first round of endorsements, which was completely understandable considering how much work it takes to do these things. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to do this in general. Having a second round of endorsements was obviously something I was excited to hear was going to happen. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to work with World to have the DSA endorsement and have the logos and all that stuff that goes with it in my communications and website. So yeah, that'd be huge.
Okay, next questions that we had submitted get into more of the policy realm. And the first one is, what is your stance on public housing?
I'm definitely pro public housing. Absolutely. I think Robbinsdale needs to do a better job of having like when develop. So I guess I'll just keep going on that point, but there's a whole bunch of other things that get that's different with Robbinsdale development compared to like Minneapolis or St. Paul. It's a smaller city for one. There's less, I think, space and room and land to develop on maybe. But anyway, regardless of all that, I think the city needs to do a better job of having affordable housing units as like a percentage of like any new construction. I think that we need to work with existing state and county resources to really bolster our public housing stock and our subsidized housing stock. And yeah, any way I can do that as a city councilor, I would be open to those options and explore them. I'm learning a lot of this stuff kind of as I go along, because this is my first time running, first time doing a lot of these things. So yeah, I think that's, again, going back to why the endorsement with DSA is so important, is because I'm definitely going to look towards you all for guidance on some of these policies and language around them, and get new ideas that I can help bring to City Hall. So yeah, definitely proponent of public housing. I think we need more of it, nationally, statewide, and definitely locally. So.
Okay, next ones that we've got are getting a bit into your questionnaire responses. And the first one that we have is referring to the question about support for demilitarizing and disarming police forces. Specifically, your explanation was that you supported efforts to demilitarize city police, move towards a proactive public safety approach, and address root causes of crime such as poverty, but that you did not support disarming Robbinsdale police officers. And the question asked if you could elaborate on why you do not support disarming the Robbinsdale police officers.
So, I mean, the big thing is, I don't think it's like, because again, I wish the question was separate. I wish it was like two different things, because I think there's the distinction between having, cops without tanks and cops that have like a sidearm or a gun in the vehicle. Because I do think that because in my opinion, working class people tend to support the police, right? I think you can make an argument that's like, okay, it's a lot of just historical and systemic, or just like the media kind of creates this glorification of the police, for better or for worse. But I think the reality is that working families generally want a police presence in their neighborhoods, especially if they feel that they're unsafe. Now that can vary. Obviously, what does that look like? Does it look like more, like I said, proactive policies where you're addressing these root causes of crime, which I think we need, or does it, look like these inflated police budgets with no accountability? So there's that kind of trying to find that balance between the two, or like, I think that's the two opposing forces that we're seeing. And so I said, I don't support disarming Robbinsdale PD. Frankly, pragmatically, I don't think it's like a political viable strategy to say that. But I also just want everybody to be safe. And like, I think just going and having that, because it is a tough thing to try to really fully articulate why. Because like, I don't want, I want police violence to be reduced. I think guns obviously play a huge role in that. But at the same time, can you really have a working, police officer show up to the job if they're gonna not have any weapons? So I just don't think it's like a realistic policy for something like, especially like one council person to pursue, and the political cost of it, when I think we can really leverage other programs and put those at the center of attention. And the other aspect too is that Robbinsdale PD is generally well liked in Robbinsdale. It doesn't make news. It doesn't cause a lot of problems. It doesn't have the kind of notoriety or whatever you want to describe it as, like the Minneapolis Police Department has. And so again, I think going back to this political pragmatism, if you will, is really kind of what's why I have that stance. I don't want to like diminish it. I don't want to diminish police violence in any regard, but it's not as much of an issue in this city, I feel. So I think we have other priorities that we have to focus on, besides yeah, that. But I would definitely support policies where, maybe if Robbinsdale PD doesn't need to carry a gun on their hip and can just keep it in their vehicle, I would support something like that. So again, I think it's just, there's more nuances to this answer than just like yes or no. And I hope that answers the question. I was kind of going a little bit all over the place, but it's a very, again, difficult, a difficult issue. So, but I appreciate the question. Yeah, I'm happy to answer it or clarify further too if I'm not clear. But thanks.
And if anyone wants to ask that when we get to the attendee questions, that would be the time for that. Next question that we have for the pre-submitted ones goes to a different question on the form, and this was the question about support for LGBTQ rights and fighting against their oppression. And it was around if you could explain what a sanctuary city for trans youth means to you and how such a policy would benefit the LGBTQ communities in Robbinsdale.
Yeah, so I think we should just do for starters, like a resolution that we can, because I think Hennepin County is it's an immigration sanctuary city, but I think we should, or county, but I think we should like have Robbinsdale declare itself as like a sanctuary city for trans youth and to really, again, trying to be at the forefront of that fight for trans rights and protections. And then, because like as the city councilor too, we can direct, or the city council can direct like city administration. And so we have the authority to make sure city employees and the hire, like the discrimination policies as for like hiring city workers is sound and just and equitable for those communities too. And if that's something that, I would like to examine and really make sure that there's no discrimination happening with city workers for sure. And then, I think we have a human rights commission in Robbinsdale, and I think they've done some good work. I think they would like to see a more active city council. I think the politics are generally right on the commission. It's just that they're, you need a city council that's going to listen to what they have to say and listen to the advice they're giving. And I definitely think would be one of those people. And maybe even, expanding the power or the scope of that commission too would be something I would be supportive of as well, because those are going to be like probably the best direct representatives of underserved communities in Robbinsdale. So.
Thank you. And then next couple of questions are all sort of in similar veins around both the Blue Line extension and environmental justice. And you already provided some of your thoughts on the Blue Line extension in your questionnaire, but would you be able to give us again your perspective on the Blue Line extension project?
Yeah, I think it's essential to or could be an essential part of the community. And I've made it an essential part of the campaign, I suppose. Like that's what I usually open with at the door. It's like, oh, I'm running for city council. I'm introducing myself, I'm saying who I am. And then like, oh, do you know about the Blue Line? And a lot of people aren't very familiar with the project, or if they are, they don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. So when I'm talking with them, I can kind of explain my perspective, which is that it will, just again, empower. I think it does go back to like the empowering working people here, because if you're getting as an average person another option for transit, that's empowering, right? If you're not relying on your gas vehicle and the price fluctuations that are set by very wealthy oil executives, again, that's empowering, right? You're literally taking away power from the billionaire class and that kind of thing. So I think that just from a standpoint of like pure economic power is appealing. And then there's environmental considerations too, right? If you're not, if you don't have to use your gas vehicle more, that is great for the environment. And we can, from a city perspective too, like from us, like strictly like a budget line item thing, there's federal and state and county money that is tied into this project. And so bringing it to Robbinsdale, right? So like we can, when they put the new rail line in, there's utility lines under the road that are going to have to be replaced. And Robbinsdale as a city doesn't have to pay for that. We can get improved crosswalks and intersections and make them safer for residents and anybody visiting the city. And again, we wouldn't have to pay for them. That's all part of the project. Any kind of, other things like beautification or additional green spaces that are along the rail line when it comes to stations and things like that. That's all something that the city council can ask for and work with the Metropolitan Council on. But we're not going to get any of that if we don't ask for it. So and that's kind of what the biggest distinction is, I think, between, or the biggest distinction I draw. There's other big distinctions, but the biggest distinction I draw with the incumbent is our stance on light rail. So whereas the incumbent is against the current route, I'm for it, and I think we should get started on it as soon as possible and really provide that thing that's why I bought my house here 5 years ago, is because of the proximity to this new blue line route. And that was a selling point 5 years ago, and it still hasn't happened yet. So I think that's definitely something I'm passionate about and something that I want to see worked on.
In terms of your approach to the project as a city councilor, the next question is, what do you plan to do to ensure that environmental justice is served in the Blue Line Extension project and that lower income and communities of color specifically are able to benefit from the project?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's an effort right now to really to have basically like zero fare public transit, which I think we should as a city support and recommend that the state do. And I hope that I can work with the other council members to get some kind of statement of support of legislation like that. And but yeah, I think just having the project there will just on its face, I think provide some of those things that the question asked, like working people, the working class is made up of all sorts of communities, and it's a universal thing, right? So anybody can benefit from it. Environmentally, I think, again, making sure that we're keeping all those things in mind. It's there's a county road that goes through Robbinsdale, and that's what the track is going to run on. And so it's not really diverting into any kind of natural areas or existing like wildlife preserves or anything like that. It's kind of already down a asphalt road. So, but again, being diligent and making sure it stays that way and doesn't, destroy any kind of natural environment would be important, especially for the Robbinsdale section. And yeah, I think we'd love to see guarantees on having the light rail, be powered by green energy. I'm not sure if there's a effort for that to happen. But again, having that would be important. And then any kind of like, I think too, I would support like having solar panels to like the stations. So like if there's any room to put, if there's any just covers or like like shelters or whatever at the station stops, if we can add solar panels to those, that would be a good thing. Expand on that. And yeah, so I think just kind of making it as environmentally friendly as possible is a huge thing that we can fight for. And again, we have to have a council that's willing to ask for those things. And right now they're not. And green space too, I think expanding that, will be, yeah, so with the rail line there, it's kind of difficult to add a lot of greenery, I would imagine, but anywhere we can, we should. So.
And then last one that we have goes a bit broader in terms of the climate crisis and environmental justice. It asks, in addition to taking further steps to prevent emissions, what measures would you support to protect residents, particularly lower income and unhoused residents, from the effects of the climate crisis, for example, summer heat waves?
Yeah, again, I think this is something I'm still learning and wanting to explore. I would support like, community centers that the city owns be open to like maybe like a cooling down area for people to hang out in, like if we need to get in fans or air conditioning, what have you. Have water, available if people need it. And yeah, I think just taking care of all of our neighbors, regardless if they're, regardless if they are staying inside or outside that night. So it's just, I don't really see that a lot in Robbinsdale right now, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so I think just working with the Parks Department, working with, again, yeah, I guess Parks and Recreation too, with the community centers, and making sure that we can, take care of everybody in the neighborhood. I wish I had like a specific like policy proposal, but I'd love to hear about any that DSA has or any other affiliated organization or like allied organization has. So, because I'd be open to kind of any of those ideas to really help out.
And that is the last pre-submitted question that we had. So what we're going to do now is, if anyone who is on this call has a question for Aaron, I would invite you to write stack in the chat, and we will go down the line for folks who have questions. Alternatively, if you would prefer not to ask it yourself, you're welcome to send me a private DM and I can read that off. I'll do them roughly in the order of each that I would get. So with that, does anyone have any questions for Aaron? All right, Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, so you gestured towards the police budget and potentially seeing reduction. I'm thinking more generally, are there any concrete police reforms you'd like to see implemented for Robbinsdale PD?
Yeah, I would like to see, I certainly would like to see more transparency in kind of what they're doing with community outreach and what kind of steps they're taking to ensure that that police officers are trained in de-escalation and not in direct confrontation. But I think that we should, as a city, fund things just as much as we fund the police, right? I mean, it's like, that's the largest line item in the budget, for sure. And finding ways to not expand it needlessly and expand funding in other places to really prevent those root causes for police interaction. I would like to see just kind of more community engagement with kind of this new era of policing, I think, that we're finding ourselves in. And yeah, I mean, I don't have a specific reform in mind. I think I alluded to, like, if we, if I would support like not having, if it just have like a wellness check. I don't know if a police officer needs to have a gun with them when they're talking to them. Maybe they can send a social worker instead. Right now, the city is working on hiring a second social worker to respond to calls like this. So I think expanding that program would be huge as well. right now there is a recruitment problem for local police departments in the metro area. And there is this tough contradiction between like, okay, well, we're in a stage now where maybe if we can't find police officers, maybe we can fund these other things to hire out like social workers or community members to really help change what policing looks like. And then on the other hand, you have like I was just on the picket line with the nurses last week in North Memorial's in my ward. And one of their biggest demands, apart from pay, is on the job safety. And they want a more active and more responsive local police department, whether that's Hennepin County or Robbinsdale PD. So there is this struggle between protecting people, working class people in their own neighborhood, and also reforming the bad aspects of policing. So yeah, I'd be open to exploring a lot of any kind of reform, but again, don't have any kind of really meaty specifics in mind. So
next person we have on stack is Jamie. Jamie, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. Aaron, I think a lot of the policy positions that you have prioritized, it wouldn't surprise me necessarily to see other like maybe more center kind of DFL candidates support as well. And I'm wondering if there are particular issues or areas that you would bring a distinct socialist analysis and perspective to the council that might really position, some socialist ideas and perspectives even further to the left and beyond what might be supported by other candidates or other council members more aligned with the DFL party.
Sure. So I would really like to see more. I mean, I would support like efforts to, implement worker cooperatives in the city. I think as it's difficult because with a city council seat with Robbinsdale, its power is kind of limited. But at the same time, I think that if we can, fight for things like fair, like, free, zero fare public transit and things of that nature, things that really, again, benefit everybody. That's kind of would be the goal of my time on the council. So trying to create that kind of universality of socialist politics locally is something I need to get more creative at, certainly. But I think being a vocal supporter of the local labor unions, I think is something that I would, again, that's not necessarily like out of step with the DFL, but I think just being more, just having it be the focus of the seat and expanding union membership in the ward or in the city as a whole, I should say, is a goal of mine. And being unapologetic about, supporting, a statewide single payer system for healthcare. I think the city should pass a resolution supporting that. And yeah, I think just trying to be a person that's listening to the working people here is something that I think a lot of DFLers don't really do. But yeah, so I'm still exploring a lot of those different ideas. And yeah, but I think like I guess I didn't even touch on that now that I'm talking about it, thinking out loud. I think rent control is something that is sets me apart too. I know there's different terms now like rent stabilization or what have you, but I would I'm hoping to, regardless of whether or not this electoral campaign is successful, my next kind of political project in the city is to get a rent increase cap set. So I think it's a good time to do it. Minneapolis is still trying to figure out what they're doing with it. St. Paul is still figuring out. I think we should just add more cities and get behind it and really push and pressure the state to make it easier for cities and communities to set their own policies when it comes to rent. So yeah, I wish I would have touched on that earlier, but that's now I'm thinking about it. I think that is something that certainly sets me apart is my support for that. So yeah.
All right. We are scheduled to wrap up at 5:45. We probably could go a couple minutes if there is a question that takes that time. But all right. We have Kip on stack. Kip, go ahead.
Can you talk kind of obviously briefly about how you arrived at the fact that you were a socialist, like a little bit of your personal story?
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate the question, Kip. I appreciate all the work you've done in the labor movement in the cities. Definitely, yeah, since I got active, you've been active. So, but I think what really got to me was Occupy Wall Street, certainly, because that was happening like as I was kind of becoming politically aware. I think part of it too is like just the terrible like rhetoric around Obama. Like my first presidential election I was able ever to vote in was the 2008 election. So I was really excited to vote for Obama. And conservatives, call them socialists. They've been calling, progressive socialists forever. And so it's like, okay, a curious kid to start learning about socialism and what it actually means, and finding out that it's basically, bringing democracy into the economic sphere. And because yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just a militant or whatever Democrat, like not like party wise, but like just I truly believe in democracy, and that is like the most just system, etc. And so finding out about the socialist thinkers and politics has really been part of my political journey, and just something I really have found to be the correct analysis too when it comes to the world and how it's shaped and how it functions. And then again, the programs and kind of the future that's envisioned by socialist thinkers is also something that I'm sympathetic to a large degree. And so expanding the power of working people through collective action. And because again, the end goal I think is creating a democratic economy, an economy that working people have a say over or have the control over the resources and how they're distributed, because those are the people that are making those resources and creating that wealth. And so those are the folks that should dictate what society does with its wealth. And yeah, so I guess it was kind of just started with, kind of just early, just following Obama, then getting kind of following Occupy Wall Street, and then getting in touch with some, local socialist orgs and learning from them. And then, yeah, I guess just reading and all of that stuff. So, and just kind of seeing with my own experiences too, that all of these analyses are correct. And yeah, cause just being a working person too, and kind of coming up in that really helped shape all those opinions and thoughts. So.
All right. I think that is all the time we have. And so I'm just going to remind folks once again that we've got one more candidate Q&A. That's this Thursday, the 22nd at 1 p.m. with Samantha Sensor-Mora. And then we have our endorsement meeting on Saturday, the 24th at 1 p.m. There is a quorum requirement of 50 members there, so everyone is invited to attend, and we hope members engage and participate there and in the other places that we'll have discussion open. And with that, Aaron, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I do want to add that for Saturday, I'm going to try to be there, but I'm scheduled to work, so there's a chance I might not be able to be there. But anyway, I really appreciate the time, and thanks for everyone that could show up and ask me some questions. And yeah, I got my email on my website, aaronforrobbinsdale.com. I'm in the DSA Slack. On Twitter. So like, if you have any other questions, yeah, just reach out or just want to talk about anything. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, again, like I kind of said during some of the questions, the answers, that I'm open to any ideas. And again, trying to really, because I think it's easier to think about like federal policies, national policies, certainly. Like, oh, nationalize the energy sector, that's pretty straightforward. How does a municipality do that? I know, I'm less sure. So anyway, I appreciate the time.
And thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a good one.